Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Wryly, and today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in November. This is a reading wrap up, and I'm very excited to talk to you about these books. Some of them were new releases, some of them were backlisted, kind of a nice balance there. All of the books that I read are between 3 and 4 stars. So I have nothing that I DNF'd, I have nothing that I did not like, nothing that is like another all-time favorite, but I'm really hoping that we get another 5-star this month. As usual, mostly horror and thriller. I do have a fantasy book in here.
That should be interesting.
But before we get into the details of these books, I do want to talk to you for a moment about Ana Luisa jewelry. This company is doing it the right way. Not only are these prices affordable, but they are high quality and they are sustainably created. I could never get my head around spending an exorbitant amount of money on jewelry, but I've always felt pretty. You know, when I have jewelry on, it just kind of like makes me feel nice. But that tended to lead me towards buying not so great quality pieces, and they would only last a certain amount of time until I would just have to get rid of them anyway. So just the fact that these are such high quality for the price means that you are doing your part for the environment as well. These are long-lasting pieces. They have a 2-year warranty. There's fast and free shipping. I mean, it's really no risk on our end, and what you get in return is just a really great piece. I think these are going to be a great idea for gift giving. If you use my discount code, you can get up to 35% off. That code is going to be listed down below in the description box, so check that out if you're interested. I will say also, like, there is something for everybody on this website. They continuously come up with more and more pieces, more and more options. There are way more silver options now than they used to have. There's customizable and personalizable things in there. I have given these as a gift before to my family and friends, and it's a really nice feeling knowing that you are giving them something that is going to make them feel nice. That's what jewelry is, really. It makes us feel nice. It makes us feel pretty. It's decorating our bodies, kind of like tattoos. There are not enough companies that are making these changes, and there are also companies that tout that they're eco-friendly, but Ana Luisa backs it up. If you can check on their website, they have all of their information on there. Peruse through that if you're curious about it. For a company to do that, they're saying that what we're bringing to the world is more important than maximizing our profits. And how we leave this world behind is more important than maximizing profits. And I don't know about you, but I can get on board with that kind of ideal. There's been so much consideration that has gone into these pieces, and I know that if you decide to give them as a gift, then that person is going to see that consideration on your part as well. So I would definitely recommend checking out Ana Luisa. And that being said, let's go ahead and get into the books that I read in November. As usual, I'm going to talk about the lowest rated that I had for the month and work my way up to the highest rated. That's going to get kind of tricky towards the end because I think I have four or 5 4-star books, and I'm really not sure how I'm gonna rank these going into it. So it's gonna kind of be based on feel because there are so many 3 and 4 stars in here. But easily enough, we're gonna start. I think I only have one just straight 3-star. My 3-star book is, unfortunately, Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Now, if you're new to my channel, this is not typically what I read. I read mostly horror and thriller, but I did get FOMO about Fourth Wing, and so I picked up Fourth Wing last month, and of course had to pick up Iron Flame as soon as it came out and read it immediately. Now, this book is extremely long compared to the books that I'm used to reading. This is YA romantasy. I'm not going to get too deep into what this is about because it is a sequel, but we're following Violet on her journey into this, it's like a military school where she is being forced to become a dragon rider, and she's going through all of these trials. She's very weak. She's got a condition where her joints come out of place or something along those lines. It's not actually specifically stated. If you like a YA dystopian romantasy, if you're a fan of Sarah J. Maas, I think you'd really love this one. First book, I'm referencing right now, that hit all of the dystopian YA romance spots for me. The tension, the underdog, the dragons. I didn't think I was gonna like the dragons. I really, really love the dragons, and we get their point of view as well. The dragon banter is just top notch. That's like the best thing about this book for me. I did think the second book was a little bit longer than it needed to be. It felt like it was dragging a little bit. Of course, you don't have that built up tension like you do in the first one because of the circumstances in the first one. This is really hard to talk about because I know those of you that have read Fourth Wing are going to want to know the juicy details about Iron Flame if you have not read it yet. But I also don't want to spoil anybody. I probably will read the next book, probably not as soon as it comes out. The initial excitement after reading Fourth Wing kind of died down when I got into Iron Flame. Also, it's focused more on battle strategies. I do like the dynamics between the family and the things that are going on with that. And of course, she ends it on another huge cliffhanger. Like, she knows where to stick the knife, you know, she knows where to get you. I do think there could be a little bit more character development going on in these, but I think if you're just in it for the ride and you're not going to overanalyze this, then you could really love this. It could have been better off if we had more perspectives or if it was in a third person perspective, but I also really like reading from first person because I feel like I can relate to that person. But it does have some limitations. The ending is a banger. She's giving Sarah J. Maas. So I see why this is so popular. That's all. This next book is categorized a lot of different ways, actually. Science fiction, horror, climate change fiction. I think some people even said fantasy. It's really hard to distinguish and describe what this book is. I'm going to do my absolute best, but you're still going to be confused because that is the point, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Have had my eye on this book for a long time. It's really short. It's like 195 pages, so it's a really quick book to get through, and I would consider this definitely sci-fi for me, and horror. This is more horror than I think it gets credit for, but not in the typical kind of way. I actually read this and then watched the movie, which is also completely different from the book, and I still don't really know how to describe this. We have these four characters, four women, and they are going on this expedition, entering into Area X, which is this area of land that seems to have its own rules. Some weird things are happening, and every time they send people into Area X to check it out, people never came back, or people don't remember. Another group went in and they all killed themselves. Another group went in and they all killed each other. Another group went in and they actually made it back, but they all then immediately got very advanced cancer and died. Now, the people that are going in right now, it's four women. One is a surveyor, one is a biologist, one is a psychologist, and one is an anthropologist. And we're following the point of view of the biologist. The biologist has higher stakes in this because her husband was one of the people who went on the last mission and came back with cancer. And so she is really trying to grieve, while at the same time she has this need to see what happened when he went in there. And so they start exploring this area, and there is a lot of description of like fungi and things that, like, this place seems to have a life of its own, and it seems to be doing things that science and nature cannot account for. As you read this, you are confused. Like, there is no point where you're like,
ah, yes, I knew that was coming.
No, like, it's just utter confusion. It reminds me of Bunny in that way by Mona Awad, where you're just like, you close this, you read the whole thing, you get to the last page, and you're still like, what the actual F? If you like that feeling, which I typically do, then I think you would really like this, especially if you're into sci-fi and the idea of 5 minutes into the future, this could kind of take over if we do not take care of the earth and things like that. You get that sense of like climate change horror as well. The dynamics of the group are really interesting. There's an element of hypnosis going on where each of these women have been primed ahead of time to respond to certain words. And when you find out what annihilation means, it opens up a whole nother Pandora's box of questions. So I will say, if you have watched the movie and you're not reading the book because you watched the movie, then don't let that stop you because they're very different. I think I personally liked the movie more. I didn't necessarily connect with the writing style, but I love what this is doing. I love what this is saying. I love how Jeff Vandermeer's mind thinks, and I just don't know how he would have even come up with this. It's just so wild and out there to me. I think I am going to read the next in this series because it feels like this is a setup. Like there's something bigger that we need to explore that I need to read on to find out. So I'm left curious. I think this is well written, well done. I don't think this is going to be for everybody. Like I said, just the writing style I didn't necessarily connect with, but the story itself I think is really interesting and really unique. Check it out if you're interested. The next 3.5-star book that I want to talk to you about is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. I read this with Jessie from Reading with Jess for her book club, the Sleep When I'm Dead book club. And we did a live show on her channel. I'll link that down below, where we got to interview Ashley Winstead. Jess had sent me over the questions and highlighted them different colors, didn't think anything about it until we were actually live and realized that I would also be interviewing and I would be reading off some of these questions as well. I got a little carried away.
It is an enormous pressure to walk a line with a character, creating characters that are relatable enough for people to want to read and get invested in, but damaged and enough to be interesting, you know, and just all the things.
Ashley Winstead is a badass. I want to be friends with her. She was such a sport. She was so genuine and so vulnerable. She was just this very genuine soul. And I really, really loved having that discussion with her. So I felt kind of bad though, because I didn't like this one as much as her other two thrillers, The Last Housewife and In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which I loved both of them. I think The Last Housewife is my favorite of hers. All of her books are so different. She's also got romance books, and all of her thrillers so far are very different. So I do think that no matter who you are, there will be an Ashley Winstead book that is for you. We're following Ruth Cornier, and this is set in Bottom Springs, Louisiana, very small town, a lot of themes of religion. Ruth's father is this fundamentalist preacher. So she's grown up under this really, really strict eye of her father, never felt like she was actually enough or valued or loved, and she meets this friend Everett. They become friends when they're like 17. We're starting in present time, I believe, but then we get flashbacks to when she and Everett met when they were 17. Current time, I think they're like 23. And we also go back farther to when she was a little girl to kind of show her upbringing and what's going on. There are some odd symbols on the trees around the forest that they are thinking could possibly be some kind of occult things going on. This whole time we're wondering, is Everett a vampire? And I know if you don't know what this is about, that probably sounds like, whoa, she just threw that in there. If you're a Twilight girly, I think this is going to be for you. There's so much reference in here to Twilight because Ruth finds a copy of Twilight and says, oh my gosh. She starts reading it, she starts thinking for herself, and she falls for this idea of love. She's never really felt loved. She's felt oppressed her entire life. We connect Everett to this because there's some strange things going on with Everett too. This is an examination of how we expect love and stories and religion to make us happy, to guide us in our lives, how that's not necessarily the truth. There is like kind of a mystery in here where they find a skull in the swamp, but that is not the main focus of this story. So I don't want to get you like hyped up on the mystery because it's almost like a coming of age. I would compare this to Where the Crawdads Sing, especially the audio narrator gave me those vibes, and you have that kind of swampland, Louisiana, small town, prejudice vibe. There are a lot of dark conversations that happen within this, though I don't think it doesn't quite go there like a Karen Slaughter would, or like her other books even. If you like stories that really hit hard and get gritty and are shocking in that way, then I would recommend The Last Housewife by this author and not necessarily this one. But if you really liked Where the Crawdads Sing and you like that kind of slow exposing what's really happening in this town and watching the main character go through the process of realizing how little power she has and then taking the steps to gain that control back. If you like that, then I think you will absolutely love this. I've heard mixed reviews of this. I know some people absolutely love this, and that's great. I love that. I think there is definitely an audience for this. So if that sounds good to you, then 100% check this out, and check out Ashley Winstead either way because she is fabulous. That's it for my 3-star books. Honestly, I only have 4-star books moving forward. All of these books, 4 stars. 5 of them. So let's talk about them. The first 4-star book that I want to talk to you about is Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. This was written in 1967, so I would definitely call this a backlist, and I would also call this a classic. I did not even realize how many books I've read that were inspired by this until I actually picked it up and read it. It's so interesting to see things in books not knowing where they came from, and then when you see where they came from, you're like, oh, they were doing it in 1967. This is pregnancy horror. It's very feminist, especially for the time that it was written. There are a few words in there, the language that is a little bit offensive. So keep that in mind. It is a product of its time. But that being said, it's so easy to read. This doesn't read like old-fashioned. It reads like any modern thriller, and it does exactly what you're looking for from a modern thriller as well. It has those twists, it has those turns. If it were to come out now, it's still relevant. The discussions in the commentary in here about women, about giving birth, about pregnancy, about religion. There are some religion discussions in here about kind of Catholics versus Protestants. And we're following Rosemary and her husband, Guy. Guy is an actor. Rosemary is a housewife and they're moving into this new apartment. Guy is kind of struggling with his career, and Rosemary just really wants to get pregnant. She wants to get settled in. She wants to have a baby. Rosemary was raised Catholic and her family has stopped talking to her because she married Guy, who is Protestant. So there is this kind of like tension there between that. But they seem like a really sweet couple. There supposedly were some really bad things that happened in this building back in the day. High rate of suicides and dead babies that were found in the basement. There are some weird scenes in here too. Like there is a scene that is almost feels like this fever dream, and it's written specifically in that way. And Rosemary is told, yes, that was a dream. The way this unfolds is really fun. Rosemary becomes this unreliable narrator. She gets pregnant, obviously, and so we're going through her pregnancy with her, and these kind of weird things keep happening to her. It does come along with this eerie feeling of loss of control, of unreliability, of not knowing who to believe, what to believe. I would definitely compare this to the Danielle Valentine Delicate Condition, which I read before that, not knowing. This is a huge influence on that. This also is an inspiration for one of the other books that I'm going to be talking about this month as well. I listened to the audio and it was actually narrated by Mia Farrow, who played Rosemary in the original 1968 adaptation of this book. So that was like kind of a really cool meta experience with that. And I have started watching the movie at this point, but I've not finished it. But so far the movie is following along the book very closely. At least that 1968 version. I don't know about any of the newer adaptations. So if you're looking for a classic to read, but you're kind of afraid the writing style is going to throw you off, I think this one is very approachable. Okay, the next 4-star book that I want to talk to you about was actually a reread for me, but I read this at the very beginning of my thriller journey, and I couldn't remember the details of it, and so I really wanted to revisit this because this is one of my favorite thriller authors, and that is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. This story is twisty, oh my gosh. It's giving Verity with the twist. It's giving Wryly Sager in some ways with the twist. We're following our main character, Amber. She's in a coma. And the way this is pitched is, hi, my name is Amber Reynolds. There are 3 things you should know about me. I'm in a coma. My husband doesn't love me anymore, and sometimes I lie. So we know off the bat, this is an unreliable narrator. We're getting 3 timelines within this. The first one is in epistolary form, and it's a 1991 diary, and we're seeing like what happened back in the day. We're also getting the current timeline where Amber is in a coma in the hospital. She cannot see, she cannot speak, but she can hear everything that's going on around her. So we're also getting kind of hints and clues in that. And then between that, we are getting an alternate timeline from just a few days ago leading up to the event. Why is she here? Why is she in this coma? What happened to her? And so we're figuring that out along the way as well. Throughout this whole story, you do not know who to trust. You do not know who to trust. It's so fast paced. It's so easy to get into. I had such a great time with this, even on my reread. And the way it kind of ends like in a way that you're like, it's like Verity in that way where you're like, there could be 2 camps of theories on what actually happened. So you're really not sure. She throws in that last minute zinger that just like makes your brain light on fire and leaves you spinning. If you have not read this one yet, please do yourself a favor and read it if you're a fan of fast-paced psychological thrillers, because honestly, this is future canon. It will have you switching your opinion throughout. It'll have you second-guessing yourself, second-guessing Amber, trying to put things together. So if you like books like that, where you are in the middle of it trying to solve this mystery, then I think you're going to have a really good time with this one. And I would definitely recommend this to like a wide demographic of people. I think a lot of people can really enjoy this. If you're one who likes to tie every single thread together and you kind of need that in order to have satisfaction, then you may not like this one as much because, like I said, there are some things that are left open. Generally, I think this is a thriller that is going to be, and has proven to be, well liked and well enjoyed and is pretty satisfying and fun to get through. This next book I also gave 4 stars to, and that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is her newest thriller, and even just based on the title, you know this is going to be like a sibling to Sometimes I Lie, in the sense that we have an unreliable narrator and we don't know who to trust and what the hell is going on in this story, which makes it a lot of fun. I read a lot of thrillers this month and I just wanted to have fun with my reading this month, so I really did. Now this one we're following Alex Summers, who is a podcaster. She's kind of, well known. She's done well for herself. We're also following Josie Fair. Both of these women are the exact same age. One day Alex is out celebrating her 45th birthday, and Josie, along with her much older husband, show up at the same place as Alex and her friends. Josie is also celebrating her 45th birthday. Josie is not the kind of person that would go to a place like this. It's like a gastropub. She wants to be the kind of person that goes to a gastropub for her birthday instead of just ordering in or, having the same kind of day-to-day ritual. When she notices that it's Alex's birthday as well, she approaches her and says, hey, we're born on the same day. I'm your birthday twin. And the way this story is told, like we start out knowing that something went down between these 2 women and that it is the subject of Alex's newest podcast. There's also a podcast element in here. I think it was done well, unlike many books that use this trope. If you're looking for something with a podcast element, I would recommend this for that. So a few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other again, and Josie has a proposal. She says, look, I want you to tell my story. And so Alex is like, okay, well, what's your story? And she's like, well, I can't exactly tell you right now because it's going to ruin that. But I can tell you I'm about to change my life and I want you to be a part of that. When Josie starts to unravel her story, it gets very complicated and twisty, and Alex finds herself a part of the story now. She becomes a part of the story. She gets twisted up in Josie's experience, and it gets messy. And there are some plot twists in here. She certainly knows how to make you think one thing while actually having it turn out to be a completely different thing. So don't trust yourself on when you're reading this. Don't trust what you're thinking. I would say the morality of this story is ambiguous, and that's kind of the most interesting part of this. There will be people who read this and think that the wrong person got the blame in the end. But one thing I do think that this story does really well is expose that nuance between victim and predator. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to think about and to take into account within the context of Josie's story that you have to really consider. And so it does get you thinking. It's, again, fast-paced. I will say the ending is a little faster than the beginning. It took a second for me to get into this one, but overall, I see why this is getting such great reviews. I really liked this one by Lisa Jewell, and I am more and more intrigued to get into more of her books. So again, if you want a fast-paced thriller with an unreliable narrator that's just going to take you for a ride, this is another one that's really, really great option for that. Okay, the next 4-star book that I want to talk to you about is The Whisper Network by Chandler Baker. She has so much discussion and commentary in her books about women in general, which I really, really appreciate. This is her debut novel where she is focusing on women in the workplace, the choices that they have to make that shape who they eventually become because of these circumstances and because of the patriarchy and things of that nature. So we're mainly following 3 women. They all work at the same company, True Vive, which I think has something to do with sports. I honestly don't know exactly what the company did. We're following Grace, Sloan, and Artie. Artie, I believe, is the lawyer, and she's kind of opted out, as she says. She's opted out of this feeling of having to look pretty at work or take that extra 20 minutes to do her makeup before work or spend time going to the gym and doing all these things to look a certain way. I love her for that.
Nope. Not going to be doing that. I have a job to do and I'm going to do it.
We also have Grace, who we're following. Grace is, I don't remember her position. She's not as high up, but she has just had a baby. And so she's dealing with new motherhood, and she's also, really cares about her career to the point where she is worried that maybe she cares about her career more than her baby, and she's dealing with the moral and ethical consequences of just having those thoughts, but also then just trying to get through the day and, breast pump during the day and not be able to have a glass of wine after a really hard meeting or whatever it may be. So she is going through it. She is tired. And then we're also following Sloan, who is like the VP of North American Affairs. She is definitely the highest up of these 3 women, and she's got a lot of power in here, but she's also got some secrets. We're also following all of their families as well. So I will say, when you start this story, there's a lot of information. I would recommend taking notes on families, who goes with who, what have you, because it did take me a while to understand what's going on, to the point where I'm not even sure I fully understand between their work dynamics and their home dynamics, which really even drives home the point even further of how much is going on in these women's lives and how much they're going through on a daily basis. Recently, their CEO of the company had a heart attack, died, and somebody's up for CEO. Meanwhile, Grace one day is in the bathroom and she hears these other 2 women in there talking about the spreadsheet that's being passed around, and it's called Bad Men, B-A-D men, beware of asshole Dallas men. Oh, another thing, it's set in Dallas, where I live. This does have a legal element to it. We know there are legal ramifications that happen, and as you're starting the story, you don't know what they're for, what's going on. On April 12th is when this event happened, and we're getting eyewitness accounts, and then we're also getting a timeline from 3 weeks prior, March 20th, the day it all began, and that is the day that their CEO died. If you like Kia Abdullah's books that have a lot of great social commentary, that have kind of a legal angle, but also a suspense / thriller angle to it as well, I think you're really going to enjoy this a lot. And it had so much to say. It had me like rooting for these women, and the end was a lot twistier than I thought it was going to be. And the last book that I want to talk to you about that I read this month, my favorite book of this month, which is pretty closely tied with The Whisper Network. I'm not gonna lie, I really liked both of them. And another 4-star is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. This was the Midnight Society book club pick for this month, which, if you are not aware, is my book club that I host on a monthly basis. It's online, it's free, Follow me on Instagram if you're interested. I will take this opportunity to tell you that we're not going to be reading a book in December because end of the month, December is just kind of crazy and I don't want to take away from anyone's family time trying to get together a live show discussion. So we're going to restart in January of 2024, and I will be releasing a video shortly with the book picks for January, February, March. So if you want to make sure you get that information, hit that subscribe button. That's going to be coming out shortly. But let's talk about Nestlings. So I discussed this with Marcy from Marcy Reads as well as Kat from Cat Chats. We had a great discussion about this book. I'll also link that above and below if you want to watch the replay. There is a non-spoiler section as well as a spoiler section, so you will be warned in time if you have not yet read the book. This is specifically why I read Rosemary's Baby this month, because the comp titles for this are Rosemary's Baby meets Salem's Lot by Stephen King. I wanted to get the backstory, and he definitely is inspired by Rosemary's Baby. I have not read Salem's Lot, so I can't say on that end, but you can see a lot of the inspiration from Rosemary's Baby in this, but he's also doing his own thing with this. We're following Anna and Reed, and they are a couple in New York City. Very New York vibes in here if you like reading books about New York. Anna is a voiceover narrator, voiceover artist. Reed's a musician, but he's working in this attorney's office or something, job that he hates. Anyway, they have a baby, Charlie, who's almost a year old, and there was a problem in birth that left Anna paralyzed. She has no ability to walk and she's in a wheelchair. So there's a lot of discussion in here about ableism as well. So that's another point that he takes so much care and consideration with. Nat Cassidy is such a considerate author. There is a list at the beginning of content warnings. He even says there is also a character who's a real racist, sexist piece of shit. Just to kind of prime you, so there's gonna be a guy in here that's saying things that are inappropriate, that are not nice. That is intentional. But also there's suicidal ideation, postpartum depression, talk or images of infanticide, child endangerment, parental trauma, marriage troubles, bodily harm, ableism, internalized and externalized, anti-Semitism, internalized and externalized, claustrophobia, some gaslighting, a whole lot of bugs in this. So if you're like weird or if you like creepy stuff about bugs, there is some really cool kind of imagery in here that's really nasty and like buggy and slimy and gooey and crawly and creepy. And the anti-Semitism thing is interesting too, because the way that Rosemary's Baby portrayed this kind of hostility between Catholics and Protestants, Nat Cassidy uses that as a way to talk about Judaism. Considering everything that's going on in the world right now, I feel like this is just so relevant. Anna is having a hard time adjusting to not being able to use her legs. She was a dancer before. Her life has been completely turned upside down. Not only that, but she's going through postpartum depression and she's just having a really hard time. Well, then they find out they won a housing lottery in New York, which is like a huge thing. They applied for it 10 years ago and it just now came through, and it's at this beautiful apartment building that's just like classic New York. It's been around forever. A lot of like rich hoity-toity people live there, but it's going to be affordable for them. And not only that, but they're willing to change some things around to make it more accessible for her. Things start getting weird. Things start getting weird, as you might expect, the same as they did in Rosemary's Baby, but this one's a little bit different. There's a lot of wild stuff that goes on in this book. And again, Nat Cassidy's writing, I connect with on this like really deep level. It's just the perfect balance for me. If you want more in depth, then go watch that replay of the live show. I will say I liked Mary, An Awakening of Terror, more than this one. Mary, if I remember correctly, in fact, let me check. I want to say Mary is written in first person. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so Mary's written in first person and this one is written in third person. So I did not feel quite as connected. Sorry, there's so much glare happening. I didn't feel quite as connected to Anna and Reed as I did to Mary. Like I was missing Mary in this one because Mary, I just fell in love with her as a character. And I think maybe that this being told in first person had something to do with that. The pacing is a little bit slower, so keep that in mind. Both of these books are kind of slow paced, but really pay off in the end. And you kind of had to pay attention. There were some things that I missed. I'm glad I had the discussion with this because there were some things that I did miss and would not have been able to appreciate if we hadn't had that in-depth discussion about this. So again, I would highly recommend this to you if you want something that's horror, has to do with motherhood, as well as religion, ableism, so much social commentary, so much discussion in here, but also really hits the nail on the head with those moments of horror and grief and nasty, creepy, crawly things. There are some bug scenes in here that are just grotesque and some really odd characters. It's so good. The ending is incredibly satisfying. That's Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. And that's gonna be it for me today, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging in with me. If you watched this to the end, why don't you give me a skull emoji for Nestlings? I feel like it kind of fits the vibe for that. If you're interested in any jewelry from Ana Luisa, not with the Anna and the Anna, use my link down below. And that's gonna be listed right at the beginning of the description for you. That being said, y'all, don't forget that life is short, so read Wryly. Cheers and goodbye.